Das geht ab, Berlin. What's up? Danke, dass Sie hier sind. Thank you so much for being here. Can everyone just lift their hands up a little bit, stretch a little bit more, stretch, good, typography, yes. And keep stretching, and then bring them down and over and cross, and big hug for yourself, because you are special and wonderful, and I'm so glad to be here with you. I love Berlin. I was here 5 years ago. Should I stand here? I was here 5 years ago, couch surfing with these crazy students near Tempelhof Airport, and naturally we spent all night clubbing and going out and it was 6 a.m. and we figured, well, it's 6 a.m., so let's go dumpster diving. And we found this crazy bakery threw out all of this bread. They said, "Oh yeah, it's cool." I'm like, "Are you sure?" They said, "Yeah, it's cool. We go, we drink, we eat." And it was a fabulous breakfast that morning that we had at 6. The people on the metro, the U-Bahn, were not super sure what was going on, but it was great. I like to have fun. This is me having another day at work. And believe it or not, I'm actually from New York City, where they have a weird sense of pride for being miserable. And I never forget, I was 14 years old, and I was just walking in Central Park on a cold winter day, and what I never expected to come across was this. Christo and Jean-Claude had covered the park in this beautiful, beautiful miles of gold ribbon. And the same walk that I had done dozens and dozens of times before had all of a sudden become a magical, surreal, immersive experience that opened up something inside of me that I had never really even known was there. And so I spent the next few hours wandering, just immersed in this new kind of experience. And I sat down with my hot dog and my pretzel, and I was thinking to myself, I said, wait a minute. You can spend millions of dollars just to make things that are really cool and look awesome? That's great, and how can we have more of them? So in the years since, I've dedicated my own work to helping people feel that same thrill that I felt on that magical winter day. I've focused on playfully reimagining our everyday experiences and finding the opportunities for joy that I think are hiding inside all of these things. So I want to share some stories with you and some of the things I've learned along the way. Fast forward a couple years, and I'm living in this big loft in San Francisco. Huge ceilings, and it's all by myself. You can see I would just ride my bike around there just because I had nothing else to do. And I said, this is too much. This is too much for one person. We got to do something cool with it. Maybe we put a rock climbing wall. Maybe we put like a half pipe and go skating in it. I said, well, what about, let's fill it with something. Let's fill it with cool things. And I said, well, what about, let's fill it with balloons. That might be cool. And we said, what if we fill the balloons with lights and then make the lights react to your movement? And then what if we close out all the lights and make it dark? And then what if we invite the whole neighborhood? What would that look like? Well, we found out. And that's what we did, and a few emails later, this is what happened. It was called Balloonacy.
What are you expecting going into this?
Crazy show.
Dark, all plain darkness, a bunch of balloons and LED lights.
It's gonna be amazing.
I've heard it's a big room full of balloons.
You see lots of crazy hair.
Yeah. Nice.
Good hair.
Awesome.
You guys ready to go in?
Oh yeah.
Do it. It's yours.
Thank you.
That was so purple.
It's like an inedible
was crazy. 2,000 people had a balloon dance party in my bedroom. And our biggest problem was just finding the toilet paper to get it fast enough for all of these people. And it was incredible. It was magical. And I saw these 8-month-old little girls go in and these 80-year-old grandmothers go in, and all coming out looking the same, happy and kind of in touch with themselves. And it just showed me the power of these kinds of experiences where you can create a container, a safe space for people to have fun, a safe space for people to be more playful and to kind of do things that they might not do in normal kind of situations. And I've sort of since kind of tried to keep exploring that and keep finding how can we make those situations happen in the rest of the everyday world. This is a quick look at the lights. There's a lot of hand soldering involved. And I may have developed a latex allergy from sleeping with all of these balloons in the room with me. So another kind of everyday situation that's really difficult for me personally is kind of the congestion of cities. There's noise and traffic and stress and all of these kind of things that are so distracting and difficult to kind of have a moment of peace. And I said, what if we could have a moment of peace, a moment of connecting with ourselves, of kind of amidst the chaotic rhythms of the city, kind of connecting with the rhythms of our body. And my answer to that was a project called Pulse of the City that turns people's heartbeats into music in real time, so that somebody kind of jogging would have a totally different experience from somebody just walking by. And so people, for the first time, could kind of hear their bodies translated into music, and they had a moment to pause and to appreciate and to experience what their bodies sounded like and what their day looked like when they weren't just going from A to B, and they had a moment to stop and to think and to reflect. A distant cousin of sort of Pulse of the City came out of me thinking about something else that's really apparent in cities, which is benches, which I'll tell you about in a moment. But before one of the things with Pulse of the City was that as great as those pictures looked, it didn't actually go so smoothly. Right when we were about to install our very first one, we carried it open to the installation site, and then the hatch was open, so we said to close the hatch, but then the hatch broke. And so we went to go to get a different nail, and then the nail broke, and then it started raining. So this is what our very first installation of Pulse of the City looked like. And I bring this up because it reminds me of one of the most important things I have ever been told in my entire life. And I want to share that with you right now. If something goes wrong, remember to take a picture. This is very, very important. Because at the end, it all turns out great. And everyone's smiling and happy and wonderful, and it's all great. This is the fabulous team that helped me work on Pulse of the City. But I think it's so important to have this mindset of no matter how much things are going wrong or how much things are falling apart, you'll figure it out and you'll find a way, and this is just something you'll laugh about later, right? And documenting it in that spirit, I think, is really important for us as we're kind of going through the ups and downs of the creative process that can sometimes really get our gut a little bit tense and stressful sometimes. But a distant cousin of Pulse of the City is the bench. And benches are cool, but it's also kind of isolating. People have this natural tendency to kind of go apart rather than come together. And I was thinking, what kind of opportunities for joy are lurking or hiding in this scenario? What would it look like to redesign a bench to be joyful, to be fun, to be something engaging and that makes people want to connect together? My response to that was something called the bench go-round, which looks like this. those old people were actually my favorite. They were really, really enjoying it. And so when people sat in the bench go around, they kind of naturally just wanted to reach out to each other and to connect and to shake hands. Some people were spinning a little bit too fast, and that was a bit of a problem, actually. But I think that's a good problem to have in this kind of scenario. So just another example of what can happen when we take the things we're familiar with and try and add quite literally a new twist to them and what that can do to people and for their interactions. And the coolest thing is made out of a single piece of wood. It's pretty fun. This is a bar in Las Vegas, and they were looking to do something fun with their outdoor area. They said, how can we bring joy to the outdoor experience here? And one thing is, you kind of go to a bar, you listen to some music, it's okay, it's fun. But we said, how can we make it a little bit more fun, a little bit more interesting and engaging for people? And one of the things that they had there was this tree. And has anybody ever been to music stores many, many years ago where you would kind of try on headphones and you would kind of go here, okay, one hand, maybe a couple people. So it was a really fun, interesting experience. So what if we could kind of bring that back to the way we experience music now and have a little bit of serendipity in music discovery? And the idea was, let's use the tree that was there and create kind of an experience called the listening tree. Inviting people to kind of discover what music was playing in each headphone. So I know what you're thinking. You're wondering, what is playing in that headphone that's up there, right? Well, so were they. These are real pictures from Instagram. Many weeks later, I was just, oh, what's on Instagram? And there are these people just trying to reach up and get this headphone, which is awesome. It may or may not have actually been hooked up to sound. But it was just fun of getting people to have a sense of curiosity and discovery around how they're experiencing this music. But in addition to, one of the things that's important for all of these projects to say is that they don't just kind of come as fully formed ideas from the beginning. And I'm just such a huge advocate of collaboration. And everything I work with is with such talented people. This was so many wires we had to entangle for Listening Tree. Things got a little bit crazy after too many hours in the desert. But one of the things with these projects is that this was an example of what the bench grind looked like from the beginning. It's very simple. This was my own hand rendering, artistic rendering of what it would look like. Very different from what it ended up like. And that's thanks to the wonderful, amazing, talented people I work with. And I just want to acknowledge that and say that so many great things are the result of team efforts and collaborations that don't often get mentioned, I think, in presentations. Pulse of the City looked even more simple when it first came out. So this is one of the first renderings and ideas. So just think it's always awesome to give credit where credit is due to your teammates and collaborators. In addition to all of these big projects, experiments are essential. It's important to kind of be working on small, fun, easy, low-risk things that can kind of have no necessary end in and of themselves. And so these are just my ways of kind of creating poetry with the world. Just kind of seeing things and responding to them in ways that hopefully mean something to somebody. I was coming out of dinner, I saw this, it had an interesting frame around there, so I thought, let's play with that and make it a nicer frame and frame the world in a different way. Bike racks, they're everywhere, right? Kind of this weird empty space. What if we could fill it with something? And and make a fun little thing for people, And advertising. Oh, yeah, I have a big problem with these weird ads and people standing on stairs. Like, who sits in their stairs on the home, looking at cameras? So I said, what if we could, what if I don't want to look at these advertisements, In my home, when I don't want the sun shining in, I close the blinds, right? So I thought, well, why not just do the same here? And just do that on the advertising. And so, most people had the chance now, but they decided to keep it closed. So there you go. Another interesting experiment that went to a place that I wasn't really expecting was right after 2 years ago, Amazon announced its drone delivery service in the US. And it was causing all sorts of paranoia and fear and confusion. I said, wait a minute, there's a definite opportunity for joy somewhere here. And how can we bring it out? Since it was Christmas, and since we were talking about drones, I thought, well, the natural thing to do is to make a mistletoe drone and have people kiss under it. And so that's what happened in San Francisco on one afternoon.
Meet me under the mistletoe while the world is all aglow, and we'll share a Merry Christmas.
So these are total strangers. I had no idea who these people were.
Under the mistletoe, as you did a year ago. Santa Claus came down the chimney and he brought me you. Oh, the sleigh bells ring so merrily, and you kissed me there and then, while the children sang 'neath the Christmas tree.
They actually kept kissing for a much longer time.
Two men, so meet me under the mistletoe. And before I let you go, I'll give you my heart for Christmas under the mistletoe.
Those guys. Sometimes you just make things and people do weird, they just do all sorts of fun stuff. But this was a very impromptu endeavor. This is us kind of hiding from the police, kind of putting it together in the plaza. But something really interesting. This thing naturally kind of blew up on the internet and was very popular. For that entire week and many views online. But as I was putting this project together, I went through something that you may be familiar with. It's called the creative process, and there's this especially interesting loop that happens right over here, where you're like, "Oh, this is awesome." No, it's not. Yeah, it is. Definitely not. And as you're about to spend $500 on Amazon to buy a drone for a weird mistletoe project, you start to doubt yourself, and you start to say, what am I doing? So what I've concluded is that if you are questioning your sanity at any point while creating a project, you're probably doing something right. So, but I think the important thing to say here is the moment you start to rationalize something, especially when it's a side project, and especially when it's for experimentation, it loses some of its beauty. And I think that's what I was in danger of happening here. And it took a lot of my friends were the ones who encouraged me to say, "Hey, just do it. Stop overthinking it and just make it happen." And so I think that's just something really important to keep in mind is making that safe space for experimentation when we're doing these fun things, which in retrospect they look like brilliant things, but at the time you're like, I don't know, was this really a good idea? In addition to, at the time I was doing these projects, I was thinking a lot about how do we, keep making room for experimenting with ideas, but I didn't want to have to actually build them every single time. Sometimes they're a little bit dangerous or really expensive, and so I said, wait, what's another way that I can keep, having small little idea experiments? And I thought about drawing. What if I just draw my ideas? That's a cool way of communicating them. And so I was thinking a lot about how do you make cities more fun? And so the result was a bunch of drawings that explored this in depth. And one of them was the skyscraper zipline. Another was a crosswalk trampoline, and naturally, there was a disco ball traffic light, right? Makes total sense. So the interesting thing happened is that they kept coming. It's sort of like this muscle that I discovered of trying to keep seeing things differently. Everywhere I was walking, these ideas kept coming and coming, so I just kept drawing and drawing, and they just kept appearing. And eventually, it turned into this. It turned into a little book that I published a while ago. Pop Music Sirens is one of my favorite, actually. I imagine, oh, it's Michael Jackson, the police are coming, okay, grass bench. And a museum actually asked me a while ago, said, hey, George, do you have anything interesting you want to do with the bench outside of our museum? And I said, do I ever have something interesting? And so we actually got to do that, and it was really awesome and fun. And people were like, oh, I haven't seen this before. They actually they wished that it could stay, which was, I think, saying a lot. But this is actually showing one of the very first drawings I ever did for the rocking bench, and this was the final design in the book. And when I started this project, I had no idea that I was going to make it into a nice, published, presentable thing. So they were super rough at the beginning, and I actually had to redraw every single one of them to make them presentable. And that sucked. That was there was no fun in that, because now I had pressure. I had to make it look good, and I had to make it presentable. And that was just difficult for me. And because of that, after I published this book and I wanted to keep showing new ideas, it was a little bit difficult. And I hit a bit of a creative block. And I was scared of actually continuing to create ideas, because I said, well, what's it going to turn, if it's going to turn into a book, then I don't want to do that. I was a little bit scarred from that whole process of needing to make things perfect. Even simple pen and paper had become too intimidating for me now. I was becoming too self-conscious again, which really sucked. And I have lots of ideas. I have notebooks, just full of lists and lists and lists of weird, wacky things. It's like magnetic wedding rings, I think Rubik's Cube Post-its, colorful storm drain smoke bombs. I don't even know what that means, but I had all these ideas and I didn't really know what to do with them. And it sucked. It was a little bit horrible. And I was at this conference a little while ago. I was taking the elevator up, and something occurred to me. I said, oh, wait a minute, there's something funny here. And so I rushed I didn't have my notebook on me, so I couldn't write it down. So I rushed for whatever I had near me, and there was a napkin, and so I grabbed this napkin and I just scribbled something down. And I stepped back and I looked at it, and I said, well, what if we had a random elevator button, right? What if we go to any floor that's there? What would that be like? It's kind of funny, right? Cool. But the next day, I was in the bathroom. I was using the urinal, and I had another idea. Again, no notebook on me, so I rushed out. I got another napkin. I knew where they were now, and so I drew something down. It's like the carnival. When you go to carnival and you're shooting the gun and the thing goes up, right? Well, we do that with urinals, right? Make a quick contest. So I said, wait a minute, I see what's happening here. The napkin is helping me draw my ideas without any self-criticism. That's really cool. So I kept going. I refined my aesthetic. I made it more presentable, if you will. This is what my girlfriend and I use at night. Because this is how I get out of bed. This is my idea. This is even adding some color, getting very sophisticated now. And so it's just been awesome. I think just a few days ago, I finished my 150th napkin drawing, and now I have a big pile of these in my home. People have tried to wipe their mouths with them, which has been pretty unfortunate. But the interesting thing, I think, here, it's been such a joy, it's been such a pleasure to do these things. But the interesting thing here is that even with these napkins, even with the fragility of them and how easy it is to draw with them, I still end up doing pre-napkin sketches. I do a pre-napkin sketch. I do a pre-sketch to my napkin sketch. And I just think it's really like weird and meta, but I want to share it here because it's even the napkin, that perfectionism is still creeping in there, And the whole point of the napkin and the whole power of it is that it's so fragile and it's so small that you can't take it seriously, right? If it's bad, it's no big deal, and if it's good, it's awesome. But it creates that safe space for me to express my ideas. I was actually going to title this talk "How Napkins Saved My Life." We might do that in the future, but it's something that is really, I think, important as creatives, that we find whatever method works for us, whether it's notebooks or napkins or doodling on other people's, that gives us that safe space to experiment and to feel free to look bad, to make mistakes, to just do whatever, and not let that self-criticism seep into. Naturally, drawing to napkins led me back to this kind of idea, and the whole beauty of it is that you can kind of just short-circuit it, right? It just stops you right from the beginning from getting into that whole cycle of self-doubt. So it's something very powerful that I'd highly recommend. There are napkins all over the conference here, and I would love to see whatever things you draw on napkins by the end of this conference. So naturally, drawing with napkins led me to working in space. I'll explain. Planet Labs is an aerospace company in San Francisco. They produce very small satellites, just about this big, that orbit the Earth every 24 hours and take lots of pictures and map the whole Earth. It's actually crazy and wild and weird. But they asked me to be their artist in residence. So for 3 months last year, I was in Planet Labs, not really sure what I was doing. Nobody there was sure what I was doing, but something interesting happened. One of the first things that I did when I was there was make a space, get it? A space for in space, for people to participate in napkin sketches. And so I started a new series of napkin sketches called Cosmic Imagination, asking what would be fun in space. Right. So these very simple things, and an interesting thing started happening. I gave everybody at the company napkins, and these are rocket scientists. These are actual aerospace engineers, very smart people, but they're kind of so focused in the dryness of their work. And I said, hey, you guys need to have some fun, man. You guys need to just loosen up a bit. So I gave them napkins, and something incredible happened. They filled up the entire boardroom, the entire wall in a day. And they started just coming up with their own crazy, wacky ideas that had been just sitting inside of them, and just let them out in a way that really kind of super impressed me. At the end, we kind of bundled them all together and put them, and it was just amazing to see this kind of outflowing of creativity and see what happens when you give people permission to sketch and to play. And I think John Bergerman's talk earlier really touched on this beautifully. It's just creating something and inviting people to participate and seeing what amazing things that they create is just so wonderful. It's just such an honor to be able to facilitate that with a napkin. It's amazing what something so simple can bring out of people. One of the other things that they work at Planet Labs is these schematics of the satellites. This is an actual schematic from their files, and I said, and they're always looking at these, they're always trying to pack them really tight, right? Because real estate in space is expensive. So how can we pack as many satellites into our rocket? So I said, hey guys, this is kind of boring. Like, don't you get bored of this? They're like, yeah, we do, George. So we said, hey guys, let's design a new satellite. Let's just back to square one. So I helped them design a new satellite that would be really easily packable, that they could put into rockets to go up into space. And it looked like that. Does this look familiar to anybody? Right? Okay. So this is now on the walls of their office, and so this is me trying to fit an actual satellite into that scheme. But it was just a great chance to have them see their work in a new way and see what they're doing through a new lens and see that, hey, you can actually have fun with even serious topics. And that designing for joy need not exist only in kind of physical installations, but it can kind of exist in any format, in any medium, in any environment. And this is my first actual graphic design project, so I kind of get why it's so awesome. I kind of super appreciate the art of what everybody here is doing, and I kind of wanted to continue that and explore that. What's it like to make 2D things? And it was right around the time of the World Cup. You guys remember that, I think, a little bit. But the World Cup is interesting. People really like to take sides at the World Cup. It's all about me or them. It's us versus them. It's so antagonistic. But I'm not that kind of guy. I just want everyone to be together and love each other and have a good time. So I thought, maybe there's a more symbolic way to represent this engagement of sorts. So, food. This was a very pivotal match in the World Cup, if you can remember France versus Germany. So what if we can represent this engagement in a whole different way? And enough of this antagonism already. Let's just bring everyone together. And let's just make it all just come together. My stomach was very unhappy that day, but it was a project called World Cup Cuisine, and so I ended up doing a whole bunch of these for everything. It was very impromptu. I did not expect to do this. This is me in my backyard. My mother was my production assistant. This is my tripod that I have my overhead camera. And this is, I believe, Costa Rica versus Netherlands. It tasted as weird as it looked. But I think it, again, just shows the importance of when the Spirit moves you, you just kind of got to do something. It doesn't matter what you have around you or what tools you have, or if you don't have the nicest camera, just do it and give it a shot and see what happens. More recently, I've been trying to explore what it looks like to design for joy using electronics and using technology, and saying, what if technology could be more playful? What if technology could kind of play with us the way humans play with each other? And what does that look like? And so that has led to three interesting projects recently. So that button was actually a real pain in the ass because it actually just never actually wants to be pushed. So people actually, they were just reaching in there. They reached in back of the project, and it's amazing what people want to do when they can't get something, but they want it. So it's one of my favorite projects. But now is where I make a confession to everyone. none of the projects that I showed you are actually mine. And all of the things you've seen have actually been plagiarized directly from someone else. And the real creator of everything you've seen here is this guy. Beneath all of my ego and desire for success and validation and all these weird things is this guy. And this guy doesn't care about any of that adult stuff. He just wants to have fun. He just wants to play and explore and discover and run around. And he wants to do it with friends. Designing for Joy is about honoring the children in all of us. It's about honoring that innate sense of curiosity, of play, of discovery that we all have inside of us. And we're all capable of designing for joy because we were all children at one point. So I think as designers, we have a huge opportunity and a huge platform to listen to and to nurture that child within ourselves, and through the things we create, help bring out the children in other people, and make a more fun world in the process. And wouldn't that be awesome? You guys have been great. Thank you so much. Find me after the talk. Let's chat. Thank you so much. Thank you.